Hello, hello, my brothers and sisters. This is Gerritt Bake, your brother in arms, and welcome to another episode of The Tactical Businessman. Today, we have another special guest for you, all the way from sunshiny San Diego, California. That's right. Don't be jealous. I wish I was living there too. Our guest today is a man by the name of Julian Bryant. Julian has a very unique and powerful story that he's going to be sharing with you, and that's why he's on the show. But I want to give you a little bit of data about him, right? He's not just Joe off the street. Julian runs two successful businesses, one with his wife, Andrea, called Lash Call. That's right. It's an eyelash studio. And then he also has an online marketing firm called $1 Million Gym. He's been in business for a couple of years, but what he does is he helps gym owners increase what matters to them, which is clientele and ultimately their bottom line or their revenue. So he's in the process of growing that right now. But without further delay, I give you Julian Bryant.
Wow, thank you very much for that awesome introduction. And also thank you for your time and having me on here. It's really great. So where do we start, man?
We could start wherever you want. So I obviously introduced a little bit about you, but when I bring guests on, we like to start in the childhood realm, right? That's where a lot of pain comes from. That's also where a lot of inspiration comes from. And ultimately, it's what starts to shape us into business owners. Some people like me have no idea that they're going to actually be in the business world. Other people, they grow up, admiring their parents and saying, I want to be just like them, kind of a thing. But so let's talk about you. Where'd you grow up? What was life like growing up for you?
Yeah, 100%. So I actually grew up in Sacramento, California. I was born in Woodland, but we moved to Sacramento at an early age. And well, the reason we actually moved to Sacramento is pretty interesting too. So I grew up in an abusive household. At a very early age, the very first memory that I have of my dad, I was in a crib. It's crazy how I remember this, but I just remember I was in a crib and I hear my parents arguing and I hear slams against the walls and my mom just like peeks in and just tells me not to worry. Don't worry. It's okay. She slams the door again. And I just hear fighting. And that was like the very first memory I have of, at that time, I didn't know what was really going on, but it happened to be my mom and my dad fighting while I was in my crib. So kind of fast forward past that, but that's the reason why we moved to Sacramento initially. And then
So
other
it was
than
your mother moving away from this abusive relationship?
correct. Yeah. It's my mom just trying to get us out of that situation.
Was it
So
just
we
you and
moved.
your mom, or did you have siblings?
It was just my mom and I. Yeah.
Okay.
So, other than that whole situation, I had a pretty normal childhood, so to speak. Well, at least what I thought was normal. And my mom just did the best she possibly could to keep me safe, happy, focus on becoming the best person I could be. She instilled good values and always would remind me that I can do or be whatever I wanted to. So that, along with seeing how hard she worked, just kind of already sparked that just go-getter mentality. And then one part that really stuck with me was one of the boyfriends that stuck around for a while, for about 8 years. So he was almost like a father figure to me. He was an entrepreneur and he owned a painting company. And I just remember this one time he came home, had just cashed a check, and he had like a stack of cash in his hand. I was like, whoa, you just got paid? Your boss just paid you? Or I said something about his boss. I don't remember exactly what I said. And he kind of just like looked back at me and smirked and said, I am my own boss. And that just stuck with me. And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. I was like, maybe, I don't know, 9, 10, maybe 11. And ever since then, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be my own boss. Like, that is just the absolute coolest thing I've ever heard.
That is pretty cool. So you've got almost like two different things going on at the same time, right? Your mother's is trying to, shelter you, protect you, take care of you, and show you the possibilities that exist in life, which, this man, for example, dude, that's a pretty incredible story, man. I am my own boss. And it's a huge life lesson, especially at that age. So at this time, what's it like for you anyways, in this situation, not having that steady father figure around? I mean, how do you think that affected you growing up?
It was I was really protective to my mom. Um, that guy ended up not, committing. They were together for about 8 years, and after that, it was back to just being my mom and I. And clearly she was lonely, and um, she was always busy, and you could tell she was just depressed. And that was hard. Um, that was hard to deal with. And then just I guess growing up, I just around my circle of friends, I didn't really know how to behave like I don't know. I'm just like trying to mirror everybody else, I guess to say, just to like kind of fit in and
Mhm.
just learn what it's like to be a young man growing up. I just have to observe and really adapt quickly.
This is
So just learning at that at an early age is kind of how I've been able to, adjust moving forward. This just became my identity, is just trying to mirror what I see and then make my own adjustments.
this is huge. I hope you guys are listening right now. What Julian's talking about is ultimately it doesn't matter if you have mother and father around, if you have just father around, if you have just mother, or if you have no parent. Like, it doesn't matter. What we do as young men and young women is we start to mirror what it is that's around us, right? And so Julian's, for example, is trying to figure out, okay, what does it mean to be a man? And so he's going to go search out what it is that this looks like in his environment, right? It was the same thing for me. I'm like, oh, what does it mean to be a man? Well, I look at my dad, I look at my grandfather, kind of thing. So, but it happens to all of us. And we say, okay, according to my current situation, my reality, right? My sphere of influence, what does it mean to be a man? And then you start to portray what those things are. Now, for some of us, it's the baggy pants down below the ass, and we think that that's check it out, I'm the man. For some of us, it's the expensive cars and things like that. For some of us, it's, hey, in order to be a man, I got to go into this space of being an entrepreneur. But regardless of what it is, it's our environment that ultimately starts to paint this picture for us.
Yeah, totally. And to make things a little bit more complicated, um, my dad's African American, but clearly I don't look it at all. So there was a clear identity crisis throughout my whole
Mhm.
life, like just trying to figure out, like, okay, what is it to be a man, but what is it to also be a black man, or am I a white man?
Mm.
So that just added, a ton of confusion to the whole mix. Um, and my group of friends was very diverse, but I tend I really at the time tended to lean more towards African American. Just at the thought, I think based off the thought that I knew I was African American, so I wanted to be accepted, and it was hard to really be fully accepted by the African Americans because I was so light in my hue. And then the reverse would happen with the white guys because I wasn't all the way white either. So it was just like this. It was so confusing at a young age. So I just turned to sports, and that's where I um, really try to find my way and really learn how to make my own way through sports and school. So I dreamt of becoming a pro basketball player, um, but I really didn't have any idea of how to really put myself out there. Um, and then I also, like, just kind of skipping to high school. So I went to like a newly built high school, and I didn't really get the exposure I needed to really make it to a D1 like right away. I wasn't like excellent. I was good. I was a good player, but
Yeah.
I definitely needed to have that, intermediate step, like a JC or like a Division II school to get to a D1 school. Um, so I just kind of went through the jock way of living, and then through high school, and then I ended up going to Sac State. But it was weird how it happened. So I was very egotistical at 17,
What?
and
Hold on. What?
right, and I refused, absolutely refused to go to JC. So it just, my ego is like, I'll treat Sacramento State University as my JC technically, and I'll get my general education there. And then I'll transfer to UCLA or Ohio State or whatever to go play basketball. And, my whole vision for doing that really didn't work out at all. So
I'm going to pause you real quick because we're going to go ahead. But if you're listening right now, again, just like every single one of you, what do you try and do in high school? You try and like fit in. You try and find that place. For some of you, if you're multiracial, like you don't know where to fit in. Believe it or not, none of you know this, but I'll tell you, like my mom's Puerto Rican, right? And I look pretty white, but I am fluent in Spanish. So this biracial, this multiracial, whatever it is you want to call it, you're right. We're looking for a label, and then behind that label, we're trying to fit in. In Julian's case, he couldn't fit in with the black crowd. He couldn't fit in with the white crowd. So where does he go? Well, sports, right? And in sports, because he excelled at sports, he could fit in there. Like that was his spot. But then I love what you said, this big thing called ego, EGO. And there's this phrase that I use quite often, and it's funny. Your ego is not your amigo,
Yeah.
And you think
Totally.
about it. And I actually did a podcast episode on this. We were going way down this side, and so I'll stop before we go there. But if the ego is used properly, it's actually what propels you to success. If it's in the right frame. But if you don't have the right frame, dude, forget about it. It's going to burn everything around you to the ground. And so I'll let you continue on that note. I'll let you continue with your story here.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate it. You articulate things so much better. So feel free to cut me off, whatever, and recap that. I really like how you're doing that. So basically, I went to Sac State, and just the typical. It was like the first time I've ever had exposure to partying. Like my mom sheltered me like crazy for good reason. She's protective of her little baby. But I went to Sac State and started partying like crazy. And within the first 2 months of being a freshman at Sac State, I got my wisdom teeth extracted along with joining a fraternity. So I had access to painkillers. And this is when things started to get pretty tricky. I'm still partying, still, being a young, dumb, full of cum kid. And
right.
Basically, this pill habit starts to develop right underneath my eyes and I continue to tell myself like, oh, I don't have an addictive personality. I don't have to worry about that. I'm not that kind of guy. Like I have a clear vision of what I want to do. I want to go play pro basketball. If I can't play it here, then I'm going to go play overseas. And if that doesn't happen, or after that happens, then I'll become an athletic trainer. So I had this like in my mind, a clear vision of what was going to happen. And there was no way I could become a drug addict. Right. So, the partying and the pills didn't combine well for very, very much longer. So after that first year in college, I ended up dropping out. The addiction started to really spiral out of control at that time. I struggled to hold any job. I'm severely depressed, diagnosed with, undiagnosed, but I would say manic depressive at least. And it just continued to get, worse and worse. And here I go from this college kid who thought that I had everything figured out to now I have no idea what the hell I'm doing with my life. Now I'm addicted to drugs and just keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
So obviously you've got a good relationship with your mother. Like what does she know about what's going on right now in your life?
At this point,
right now, I mean like right back then.
Right. At this point, she, I had this hidden angel, this hidden like guardian angel who would message her or email her and tell her things that I was doing in public eye. And somehow she would always just, it was almost like she hired a private, like a private investigator to really keep tabs on me, because somehow she would always tell me information that didn't really get out to anybody. And our relationship was, I kept telling her lies. So I think because she was in such denial, she didn't want to accept the fact that, you know, I was changing and I was becoming this, you know, really addicted person who's going far off the clear vision that I once had. So
she has an idea of what's going on. Again,
yeah,
we don't know
she
who this
totally had an
person
idea.
is, or maybe it's just mom's intuition. Because let's be honest, uh, moms are pretty good at that kind of thing.
True.
But you're
Yeah.
still living in this fantasy world that, hey, like everything's cool. Like I got my life together, but in actuality, like it's just crumbling before your eyes. So you find yourself in this like dark place, and what ends up happening?
So, you know, in this time, you know, my circle of friends changed drastically. I was selling drugs, everything to do to support that habit. Dropped out of school, of course, you know, I was academically disqualified and I didn't petition to get back in because there was no way I could manage, you know, that habit along with everything else I was trying to, you know, overcome on the inside. And you know, really selling the drugs to support the habit, and was honestly the only way I could really support living too. And at this point, again, my mom didn't really know how to deal with any of this. So our relationship started to get worse, and we actually didn't speak for a while. I would say months at a time, maybe even half a year at a time. And then, you know, my morals and my values became really foggy, which led me to do things outside of my character, like rob and steal, really. I justified it in ways like, you know, oh, this person he's a drug dealer, or, you know, he's in drugs as well. But at the end of the day, I was still in the wrong, and really in a very dark place.
So, and you kind of went over this real quick, but I want to kind of slow down here for a second because um, what you guys are listening to right now, first of all, I hope you realize like this is a very personal story, and Julian hasn't told this to a lot of people. Um, but understand the relationship between what he's telling you about his life and then your life as well. Like you may never have been in this situation where you were addicted to any type of drugs, where you were selling any type of drugs or anything like that, but you were addicted to something in your life that was ultimately causing your downfall. And it could have been porn, it could have been alcohol, it could have been prescription drugs, you know, it could have been any of a number of things. But understand that you are no different. In fact, the only difference that you have is that, and you'll hear now, is that Julian's willing to share his experience, and he's willing to admit, as he's told you already multiple times, you know, the error of his ways. And we all go down this path of just trying to figure life out. It's not happening the way we want it to, so we try and figure it out. And we try to, exactly like he just said, justify it. So listen to what he's telling you and how it relates to you. So go ahead, Julian. You're down this path of not just selling drugs, but at this point, like you're ripping people off. And the justification being, well, hey, they're drug dealers, so who really cares?
Yeah, 100%. And then, you know, long story short, that pill addiction became a heroin addiction. I'm hanging around with known criminals. And then by the age of 21, I found myself in prison.
21 years old in prison. Now, you had a particular experience, and it involved, you know, basically your life. Was this prior to or after you went to prison?
This was prior to.
Okay.
I know I skipped over that big part, huh?
You did, right? Because it is
Yeah.
a really big part. And so he got to the end, which is pretty much if you can't figure out how to do life on your own, then somebody eventually is going to tell you how. And in his particular case, it's prison. You know, for you, it could be a divorce lawyer. You know, there is no difference in his story and yours. If you can't handle things on your own, eventually somebody else is going to handle them for you. So let's talk about this, because that really, I think, was a huge shift in your life. It was a turning point.
For sure. So, as you know, you're well aware of my story. So, that heroin addiction that carried on for, I would say, nearly a year. But right up until that jail time came, the prison time sentence came. I was, just trying to scramble things together and really just carrying on with, doing just getting over on people, right? And this one time I went to meet up with somebody. There's actually two moments that I want to discuss right here, because I think both are turning points. So there's one time where I met up with somebody, and it was a kind of another drug deal gone bad. I mean, it's pretty crazy. So I brought, like, the weed, and the guy got in, and basically he actually set me up. I was going to set him up, and he set me up, and he pretended to reach in his pocket to give me cash, and he kept the door open and tried to run out, and I grabbed the bag, and then his friend reached inside the door with a little 22 and shot at me twice, and it went through my sweatshirt into the armrest, and I let go of the bag, and I just didn't really know what to what to think of it. So I just kind of sat there in my car on this main busy street, which was really crazy that they even were bold enough to reach in the car, rob me, and shoot at me. And they aimed at my chest. So clearly they really did not care at all. And they ran into this field off. But I just sat there and I said, you know what, that was a major turning point too. And I said, you know what, it's either I give this up completely, or I give really zero fucks. Like, I don't care at all. Right. And mixed with the drug addiction, I chose to not care. My judgment was very foggy. So a week after, I'd say 2 weeks after that, I kind of carried on the same type of deal that happened to me to another person that was kind of in the drug world. And he got in the car, and I had premeditated to put the child locks on. So when he got in the back of the car, he couldn't get out, but he didn't know that. I told him to close the door, and he was unsuspected. He thought that I was just going to, basically sell him some heroin and exchange for some Suboxone, so that I can actually try to, get off of the heroin myself. And the reason I set him up is, again, I justified this. Every time I try to do something, I always justified it. So I justified the fact that at one point I had done a deal with him in the past, but he forgot that he stole from me. He stole $100 from me. And I decided to get him back for that. And he forgot that happened. But anyhow, to make a long story short, he got in the car, and the exchange went on. And I pretended to reach out and give him money, but instead I pulled out a gun. And I said, give me everything you fucking have, or I'm going to blow your brains out. He knew I wasn't going to. I was just all talk, or at least he suspected I was all talk, just based off our prior engagements. I told my driver, because I was in the passenger seat, I told my driver to go ahead and speed off. So he did that. We're in a mall parking lot. So kind of give you some context. We're in a mall parking lot. The dude hops in the back. We drive off, and I have this gun pointed at him. And he kicks me in the face. He actually kicked me in the face because he thought that I wouldn't have done anything. So at that point, I didn't really know what to do. So I pistol whipped him. And we just continued to scuffle, and he kicks me again, and he kicks me a third time. And then finally, that's when I started to feel the rage. I just kind of leaned back, and I cocked the gun, and I pistol whipped him one more time. And that's when I actually said, if you kick me one more time, I will blow your brains out. And I told my driver to stop the car. And at that time, he could feel the seriousness. He could see the darkness in my eyes. There was no going back at that. It was a do or die moment. And I actually did squeeze the trigger just not hard enough. And there was like something in me that it just told me to stop. And at that time, I guess he just really felt the seriousness, and he started just giving everything. I didn't ask for everything. I just wanted this boxing so I can stop this darkness, stop, at least attempt to get some sort of help, because I knew no other way. And he gave me everything. I told the driver to go ahead and roll down the window and let him out, so he can let himself out. So he did just that. And he ran to the Nordstrom, because, we're at the mall, and we just went ahead and sped off. We could hear the sirens going, and we just, we hit the main street and took a immediate right to get on the highway, and cops are speeding by us. And, we go, we got, at least I thought I got away. A month later, they hit me up for a warrant, and, they get me coming out of my apartment.
So this is a really powerful story, and if you're listening right now, take a moment to just digest what happened. Julian said a couple of things while he was talking that relate to every single one of us. And when we lose that focus of where it is that we want to go, for whatever reason, we start to sedate. Because why? Because we refuse to face reality. We refuse to face that, hey, my life's not working the way I want it to work. And so we'll find alcohol, we'll find pornography, we'll find drugs, we'll find another woman, we'll find whatever we can to get our mind off of what it is that's actually happening right now. And if you wouldn't have had the heroin addiction, in your right mind, would you ever have pointed a gun at somebody and robbed them?
Absolutely not.
No. But because you were in this place, you use this word, justified action, right? In your mind, you justified, hey, this was necessary. This was necessary, and he is actually a worse person than me. Therefore, I'm justified in doing this. And you almost got to the point, like, let's be honest, if you would have shot him, one, the likelihood of you killing him at that close range is pretty high. But two, if something like that would have happened the rest of your life, dude, it's over. We're not having this conversation. You're sitting in prison for the rest of your life. So for whatever reason, you didn't go through with it. And eventually, like it does with every single one of us, the past catches up with you. For you, it was a month later. So you go to prison. How long were you in prison?
3.5 years.
3.5 years in prison. All of a sudden, you go from hanging out in an apartment with your friends to now you're in prison. What was that transition like for you?
It was shocking, to say the least. Jail and then prison. But I was in jail for a year and a half fighting my case. And, my mom came back in a major way, and I reconnected with the love of my life, and actually ended up getting married in jail, which was really awesome. So, I mean, through all the darkness, there was so much light that came from it. But yes, it was such a shock. I remember the first week being there was just really sobering up from heroin. And then after that, you just continue to wake up, and it was in a dorm, like where I was at, it was like this dorm of 50 men. Just like, wow, this is it. Like, you just keep saying, like, I can't believe I'm here. Like, every morning you wake up, I can't believe I'm here. This is crazy. I can't believe I'm here. And this is the first time I've ever been in trouble, So I went 0 to 100. And I had no idea. I'm asking people how the process is. I didn't know what how the court process went. I had no clue about prison politics or anything of the such. So I'm just, again, I'm in this situation where I'm constantly like having to go back to my like childhood ways of trying to adapt and trying to just observe and learn how to kind of fit in without making too much noise.
Like, you're trying to survive at this point, honestly.
I'm trying to survive. Yes.
So you've got, and he said prison politics, for if you're not aware of that, basically in prison, you are segregated by race. Like, that's the way it works. So if you're black, you go with the black people. If you're white, you go with the white people. If you're Hispanic, you go with Hispanic, Asian, same thing. And now, mind you, Julian already told you he's half black and he's half white. So where does he go? And so you're not only are you struggling with trying to fit in this environment where you know nothing, but now you're trying to also fit in because you got to pick sides in a game that you don't even want to play anymore.
Yeah, man. That was really, really difficult. At the beginning, they ask you like the guards make you choose. Honestly, they're like, who do you want to be settled up with? And that's it. Just I couldn't choose. Like I didn't know. I was like, well, my skin's white. Like I don't know. I really don't know. And they're like, you have to choose one. So I chose white at first. On paper, they just put me down as a white guy. So I get in there and I'm like, oh, I'll just stick to myself anyway. So who cares? But then they start saying, inward this, inward that. And I'm like, oh man, nah, I can't do this. So I ended up switching sides, and there's so many stories within this, but I've been in a prison riot or a jail riot. I've seen prison riots. I've seen people get stabbed. There was a lot that went down. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in prison. Like I said, I got married in jail. So much happened. But basically what it all came down to is, I really just try to focus immensely on personal development and furthering my education, because at this point I decided that I had to, if I wanted to really make something of my life and to fulfill the vision that I had of some type of greatness. I didn't exactly define it at an early age of what that greatness meant, but I wanted to be an NBA player, so that meant some type of greatness and excelling at something. So with, when I was in, lockdown, I knew that I had to be the absolute best at whatever it is I choose to do, and be so great that I can't be denied. So just when I, had that mentality with everything that I did, like I didn't let any darkness in me. When I was surrounded by so much darkness, I just focused on the light.
So I'm going
And
to pause you real quick, because this is a big turning point, right? You talk about this darkness, and ultimately that's what it is, right? The negativity, the hate, all of these people who, let's be honest, 99% of them really have no life aspirations or goals. They're going to perpetuate what's already happening in there. And so you had a choice to make, and that is start to play the prison politic game, start to go down that path, click up, all that other stuff, or say, I'm going to focus on bettering me because I don't ever want to be in this situation again. And when all of us you're listening, pay attention to this. If you're not there, you will be. Or if you haven't experienced this, you will. At some point, you will be at the bottom of your own pit, in your own darkness, with a choice to make. And I had the same choice to make, which is continue down this path that I knew I was going to eventually crash and burn, or choose to go all in on myself. And this is exactly what Julian chose to do right here, in one of the most difficult circumstances. If you've never been to jail or you've never been to prison, don't pretend you even have any idea what it's like. You're restricted in your movements. You're restricted in basically who you can talk to. You're literally forced. He talks about these prison riots and fights. Guess what? Because of who you choose to hang out with or who you're told to hang out with, you don't have a choice when a fight happens. So all of these freedoms that we take for granted have all been taken away. But even in this environment where he's so restricted, the amount of time that he can work out, when he can eat, when he can sleep, all these things have been restricted for him. Even in this situation, Julian chose to go all in on himself. So talk about some of the things that you did.
So it really started in jail, with this pursuit of greatness. And I saw this one inmate in there that really stood out to me. He was doing college courses in there. I was like, dude, how did you get that in here? Like, I would love to just use this time to just really focus on doing my, further my education. Because at this point I was already reading every self-help book and personal development book that I could. But I'm like, you know what, I need to like apply to something. I need to apply what I'm learning to something other than just sitting in my bunk and feeling good. Because there is only so much I can do, which is great. It freed my mind, it freed my spirit. So even though I was locked behind bars, I still felt like free and happy. I would hold those moments of happiness and contentness as long as I could, just by based off reading those personal development books. So I asked the inmate, how he got those books in there, and he told me that his family sent them, was able to send them in. There was like this correspondence college that allowed for you to basically pursue your AA degree, at least within jail. In prison, there's a lot more options, but within the jail segment, like that was not really heard of too much. So I called my wife. I think she may have been my girlfriend at the time, but anyhow, I called her, and she held me down. She did everything she could to support me in any way that I possibly wanted to, with further my education and paying my bills and doing everything she could. So she went ahead and located how to get that process started. So that's what I did. I continued my education, and I actually got my AA degree inside. So that was a huge part of what I did in jail. And I would just literally stay on my bunk all day and really just study. Like, people would try to get me to go down to the little rec room or whatever and just hang out. I'm like, I don't have time to hang out. Like, they're like, you're looking at a life sentence. What do you mean you don't have time to hang out? This before I was sentenced to 3.5 years, which thank God I was, I got such a low sentence. But at this point I was still looking at 15 to life, and I just wanted to do whatever I could to better myself and to clear my mind. So along with just reading and really focused on getting my AA, I had a strict workout regimen where I got up to doing like 1,600 push-ups every other day. It was pretty, I was in great shape. My mind was good. I felt good. I was like continuing to just better myself each and every day. And I continued that as long as possible. And naturally I would attract the others that were trying to, do the same thing with, with their lives. So, by, just naturally I would repel those they wanted to stick with just the prison politics and attract only the people who wanted to better themselves. So people actually respected the fact that I was such a go-getter, and even in hard times, I chose not to participate with all the nonsense. So that that was pretty much my 3.5 years after being sentenced. Thank God I got the 5-year sentence, and they gave me credit for being in jail. It's a weird
Time
how this
served.
is.
Yep.
Right, the time served credits and all good behavior type credits or whatever. And then in prison, I just basically carried on the same mentality, as just like the get better mentality. But I got very sick in prison with Crohn's disease, which actually was a blessing in disguise, because during the time I was in the infirmary, that's when a prison riot occurred, and I was just, I got very, very ill. I lost about 50 pounds in prison, and I was bedridden for about 4 months. And man, that's a whole story in itself. It was pretty crazy. I didn't eat for almost weeks at a time, just eating these, like, drinking these smoothies. They wouldn't let me have canteen, like the commissary, your pack. So basically I was just at the beck and call of whatever the nurses would bring me. And some of them weren't as enthusiastic to help me out. So
Right.
that was pretty crazy.
So I kind of want to sum this up. Again, we all find ourselves at this lowest of lows, and here's Julian at the lowest of lows with a decision to make. Again, go all in on himself or go all in on the path that he'd started down. And he chose to go all in on himself. And there's, like Julian was saying, there's so many lessons here. There's so many stories that can come out of this. But what I want you guys to understand is he took it upon himself to get better. And he did this in a couple of ways. And he talks about it. He talks about physically. He put himself in the best shape of his life. He talks about, mentally and emotionally, but he touched on it barely, but he reconnected with his mother, and then also, got married in jail, but he rebuilt that relationship with who is now his wife. And so his focus shifted from all the things that he thought were important, partying, drugs, and everything else, to what really matters, which is himself and his loved ones. Like, that's it. So you want to know, literally, we'll sum this whole thing up right now for you. And then I'll say sayonara and we'll be off. Just kidding. If you want a better life, you have to learn to invest in the things that matter most. Yourself and those that are closest to you. Period. So anyway, we'll keep going. So you get out and you've got now a wealth of life experience, we'll call it. And then you've got stuff that happened when you were a child, and then you've got everything that you learned. Like, what are you thinking about doing when you get out?
So I asked myself that question almost every day when I was in, and actually the last 100 days, I made a 100 days to freedom journal. So I would basically journal everything that was going on in my mind for the last 100 days. And at the end, I would just ask myself, like, what is it that I really want to focus on? Like, I spent all this time. What is it that I'm going to really focus my energy on and hit the ground running when I get out? And I was stuck on like money. Like, I just want money. I just want to, basically make a living for myself. And then I just kept asking myself, why? Like, why do I want that? Trying to dig, peel the onion back. Why do I want money? Like, what is it about money? I was like, you know what? I want freedom. I want money. I want freedom. But why do I want that? So I just kept asking myself that. And on the very last day, I was like, you know what? I've always been fascinated by business. I love business. And I know that is so closely tied to money and freedom. It's like, so I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to do something along the business. Maybe I don't have it all figured out right now, but I know I'm headed in the right direction. And I was okay with that. So what I did when I got out is the very first thing I had to, reestablish myself. So I got a job within the first month in construction, and it was paying me $25 an hour. I was like, dude, this is the best paying job I've ever had up to this point. This is awesome. So I did that for about 8 months, saved up $20,000. And during this time, helping my wife, we're both helping each other, but I'm helping her get her business started so she can, because I had this vision like, okay, we're both going to be business owners and we're going to move to San Diego. And she thought I was crazy. She thought that, just me being in construction was going to be perfect. I was just going to, that was it. Like her working at the DMV and me working in construction, and I was going to have my pension and all that. I just didn't see that for myself. So as soon as possible, I quit that job with the $20,000. I helped her, start her business. And then I also dove into marketing. Another marketing business. So I became like a freelancer, just helping other local businesses. And that was just a whole other rabbit hole, but I loved it. It was exactly what I was looking for. At first it was like, oh, I want this laptop lifestyle, but that's not really, it wasn't a reality for me. So it's still not, but it's not like, that's not what I'm going for anymore anyhow. So, I don't know if I went way off on a tangent for what you asked me. But
no, you're 100% on track, because eventually what I wanted to get to is like, how did you get to where you're at right now? So right now, how did this idea for $1 Million Gym come about?
A lot of trial and error and really, kind of digging within myself to figure out what industry I connected with the most. And if you remember in the story, I told you that, I played sports my whole life. I wanted to be an athletic trainer. So it was like staring me right in the face, like, go out to gyms, go out to gyms. But I knew nothing about CrossFit at the time. That's who I primarily, help out right now. But it was like staring me in the face. But I'm like, oh no, I'm going to go help a lawyer. Oh no, I'm going to go try to help a dentist. Oh, I'm going to help a real estate agent. So I was like, I'm trying all these different industries, like bouncing around everything except for gym owners. Cause I'm like, oh, they're probably broke anyway. But, but that's, it was, I don't know. It's just me trying to figure things out. And then I was like, you know what? I've actually always wanted to own a gym myself. So why don't I just go and work with gym owners? And the very first client in the fitness industry was a referral of one of my fraternity brothers, actually. And the referred person was Anthony. We're like really close friends now. He's my client, and he has 5 locations. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. Like, he's really doing his thing, and I know I can really help him out because I see like some clear ways to to help him really grow his business. And kind of getting started in that industry, like I still didn't really know what I was doing, but he gave me that opportunity to test so many things out and to learn. And I was still so hungry in learning everything I possibly could about that industry. And seeing how I could just really provide value, and just having that value first mentality, and to continue to really just provide as much value as possible for it to actually make sense to invest in marketing. Now he's been my client for just about a year, and we've helped him add an additional location, over 300 new members. Like, I've really helped him go from a 6-figure business to pass the 7-figure threshold, which has been incredible. So, yeah.
So it's a beautiful thing. I want you guys, especially if you're listening to this, you hear the tonality in Julian's voice change when he's talking about the darkness, and he's talking about where his life was at, to where now he's aligned with his passion. He's aligned with his purpose, and he's excited, right? His clients are his friends, his close friends. So ultimately, this is where you're at right now. So let me ask you, where do you see yourself being in like 5 or 10 years?
Where do I see myself being in 5 and 10 years? Really, I want to be an investor, still a serial entrepreneur. I'm getting into more and more startups and more businesses. But really, I want to be like the #1 fitness consultant, business consultant in the nation. So right now I have my eyes on Alex Hermosi and Mike RC. Like, I look up to these guys. Like, they're amazing. And I want to be in that position where I'm the go-to consultant. I love business, and I love like having an impact that you can see. Like, it's like helping the people who are helping change lives. And in that process, like, you're changing lives as well. And it's so much easier when you are helping others, like, actually, make their living, or helping them to sustain their living. That's really fulfilling to me. And I kind of want to get into speaking. I need to improve on that. I'm more of a writer right now, but yeah,
Man, you are well on the path. I will tell you that right now. You've got a powerful story, and you're able to clearly articulate that. So don't think you're too far away.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Listen, so I kind of want to wrap things up, but I want to wrap it up with, based on the life that you've experienced so far, which at 27 is more than most people experience in a lifetime. Based on your experience in the business world and some other things in life, like, what would be your top 2 or 3 tips that you would give to somebody who's either thinking about starting out right now or struggling with where they're at?
I would say the #1 thing that's really worked for me is investing in a mentor. Mentorship has been huge to me. I mean, just finding somebody who's like a few steps ahead of you, even 1 step ahead of you, can really shorten that cycle of getting to where you want to go. That's been the absolute game changer for me. And then just I don't know, like, some of the advice is not really practical, but I would say just continuing to just be hungry. Like, you just have to want it. If you really want it bad enough, you'll find a way. And focusing on already having what it is that you're searching for, and continuing to ask yourself why over and over again. Why do you want that? And trying to figure out what that why is that really drives you is key.
That's beautiful. So there you go. We've talked about this before too. Um, there's an old African proverb, right? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with somebody. And you nailed it, right? And I couldn't agree more. When did my life start to shift like dramatically? Was when I got a mentor. 100%. 100%, because from their angle they can see things that you can't.
Yeah,
Um,
they've already been there.
yeah, exactly. And number two is you started off hungry, but really what it is aligning with your why, aligning with your purpose. And so if you're listening right now and you're asking yourself, like, I don't feel hungry when I go to work. I don't feel hungry when I go to the office. I don't feel hungry when I go to my business. Then something's off. And it's not a bad thing, but you're realizing that something's off. So exactly like Julian said, you have to ask yourself, what's my why? What is the reason why I'm doing why I'm doing? And if it's not aligned, if it's not making you wake up every day on fire, if it doesn't make you want to go out and hunt, then find something that does. This world today is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing, the opportunities that exist. Julian, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your story. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you, either they own a gym and they want to help grow it, or they just want to reach out to you, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, you could really just reach out to me personally through Facebook Messenger, Julian Bryant, my personal Facebook page. Or if you are a gym owner, you want some strategies, I have a guide that you can go through, or also a video that kind of helps you go through this strategy that has been growing gyms all throughout the nation, just by tapping into your existing database, which you can access at themilliondollargym.com. Free guide and everything like that. But either way, you can feel free to reach out to me. And yeah, I'm happy to connect with people.
There you go. Themilliondollargym.com, or Julian Bryant on social media. It's JulianBryant. For those of you like me that are challenged when it comes to spelling, that would be how you would find him. But listen, ultimately, if you need help, if you have issues, if you have questions, if you have problems, if you're lacking direction, clear focus, if you have obstacles in your way, I've listed a number of things. Why? Because I've struggled with every single one of them. Reach out, GerrittBake.com, or just send me a message and we'll have a conversation. Because ultimately, the one thing that matters is that you're aligned with your purpose and you're doing what you want to do out of life, period. So, Julian, again, thank you for your time. I thoroughly appreciate it. And all of you who are listening, thank you for being here. And as always, stay safe, and we'll see you on the next one.